because of the COVID crisis, but we will return to full master planning, and final plans for this neighborhood will not proceed until the total master planning effort is completed and the mayor and commission adopt the master plan. So in terms of the partnership and ownership structure, the Athens Housing Authority, when the SPLOST funds are made available, hopefully in June, will move to close and buy the property from our business partners, and we will own the underlying land for Bethel Midtown in perpetuity. We will lease property back to the business partners for the vertical development, but we will also be a partner in that vertical development. And all the SPLOST funded portions of this project will be publicly owned. Primarily, the SPLOST funds will go towards the purchase of the land, infrastructure that's necessary not only to develop this project, but to open up the North Downtown area, and to any vertical development that the Athens Housing Authority might own or might be a party to on the overall property. I'm going to turn this over now for discussion of low-income housing tax credits, how they work, why they're so important to this transaction, to Christina Davis, who is the specific project manager for Columbia Residential for this North Downtown transformation. Christina?
Thank you, Rick, and thank you everyone for the chance to present. As Rick said, he's outlined a good deal of the history here, and we've asked for a variety of actions to be taken by mayor and council in an order that is probably not optimal. Ideally, we would be done with master planning, as Rick said, at this time. But unfortunately, there is a tax credit application deadline fast approaching issued by the Department of Community Affairs. This is the primary vehicle for funding affordable housing in the state of Georgia. There are federal and state credits awarded, and it's a highly competitive process. The qualified allocation plan tends to change year to year. We have assessed this property in this area for the last several years, and we feel that applying in 2020 is really critical for several reasons. The QAP can change, and so what might score really well this year may change dramatically next year if the QAP changes. And also the living conditions of the current Bethel homes are not ideal. And so we would really like to move quickly towards at least trying to secure leverage outside funding. So this would provide outside funding from the state. A typical tax credit transaction really is leveraged with about 70% of equity generated by the tax credits. And I've provided here just a general example there. Again, echoing what Rick said, SPLOST funds are used primarily for the land acquisition and horizontal infrastructure. Tax credits applied competitively through the state Department of Community Affairs would be the primary vehicle for vertical construction of affordable housing or mixed income housing. So where that puts us in terms of the timeline is, we are hoping to we're planning to begin online public input for some master planning work this month. This is, I'll probably say this a few times, this is not replacing face-to-face. This is additive of any face-to-face workshops and charrettes and planning work that we would like to continue to see happen here for the North Downtown area. But in June, there are several actions that we're asking mayor and council to take. Those are outlined here. And then June 21st is the application deadline to this Department of Community Affairs for this first phase of tax credits. We would expect, we're hoping that face-to-face work could begin again and the design of the master plan later this year. And then there would be a formal review and adoption by mayor and council of that master plan for North Downtown. And then if we are lucky in their award of tax credits, we would be notified later in the year. November is the current estimation.
So section 3 will discuss the actions, the 4 actions that the commission will be required or may need to take in order to successfully apply for the tax credits. The first item relates to the issue of purchase of the land. The in order to purchase the land, there will need to be an intergovernmental agreement between the Athens-Clarke County government and the Athens Housing Authority, allowing for the transfer of the SPLOST funds so that we can take down the land, acquire it, and place it permanently in the public trust. There will be certain requirements obviously built into the IGA. Some of those include things like perpetual public ownership of the land, preservation of the existing affordable housing on the site. We're not going to be reducing the total number of deep subsidy units on the site, that we will be increasing affordable housing on the site through the use of low-income housing tax credits, that it will be a mixed income site, and that we're going to do everything we can to avoid disruption to existing residents to the fullest extent possible. It's too early to know exactly all the details on that because the master planning process has not yet been completed, but we will be paying close attention to the concerns of both the residents and the citizens of our community as we go through that master planning process. And our goal is to, as it says there, to avoid disruption. We will be requesting a vote by the mayor and commission at your June 2nd meeting, approving that intergovernmental agreement. Our organization will then, our board will then approve it. It will be executed, and that will allow for the transfer of funds to complete the purchase into the public trust.
There's a second requirement for the tax credit application, or a second item that we're requesting mayor and council take action on in the June meeting as well. And this is directly related to the tax credit application. It is a threshold necessary item for the application itself, and that is a rezoning of the Bethel property from its current zoning category to commercial downtown zoning. This is in line with what is already provided for in the vote for SPLOST, that an increase in density is requested in this area. It's required to be able to provide additional affordability on the site, across the site. One thing we wanted to let folks know is that the outcome, again, this is kind of the timeline here that is less than ideal. The outcome of the master plan, one of the many outcomes, would be a zoning overlay would be developed. And so it would look maybe like CD, but maybe a little different. And so we fully expect that the CD zoning is temporary and that it would be fully replaced at the adoption of the master plan and any zoning regulations that it generates.
I have a question, Christina. That rezoning, is this the matter that was before the Planning Commission last week?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Which they recommended adoption.
We did unanimously. Yes, sir. The second item, number 3 in general, but the second item related to the tax credit application that we are asking for action on is the adoption of a revitalization plan. This is an existing downtown master plan 2030 that I think many are already very familiar with and probably already expected that it was adopted and formally recognized. It has not gone on record as being such in the format that Department of Community Affairs looks for in their applications. And so we are simply asking that this be a resolution is acknowledging the existence of this master plan. And that really allows us to be competitive in the application process for tax credits for the first phase. And so that is a requested vote that will go before you on the June 2nd meeting as well.
I have another question. Mr. Mayor, did we merely vote to accept the master plan? Is that what happened a few years ago?
That's correct. I think that was in 2013 or thereabouts.
Right. So this one is just acknowledging it? I'm not quite sure what the difference is.
We're going to be, I mean, we are kind of comparably acknowledging this, as I understand, and Christina, you may have just mentioned this, and I apologize if I'm repeating something you said, but DCA needs us to have done that within a 5-year window of the application for low-income housing tax credit. So this gets us within that time frame.
I see. Very good. Thank you.
It also allows more specific language directly related to SPLOST 2020 to be incorporated into that plan, and that helps with the DCA interpretation and points as well.
So, yeah, I have clarification, I guess, following that. So all we're doing is voting to accept it again within this 5-year time period, Because we're not. My understanding is that there was you could accept it and then adopt it. Are we just voting to accept it again?
Essentially, it's kind of confirmation of what's been done already with a few amendments, kind of as Rick just mentioned. This for kind of the public mind would be different than an adoption where you would think that every street corner that's outlined within the downtown master plan is exactly what we expect to happen. Absolutely. And so this in no way preempts that coming public input and master plan development.
Okay.
Just want to make that really clear for everybody.
I have a question. So the downtown master plan, there's elements of it that have kind of like fallen by the wayside because new development has come in that didn't exactly conform to the plan. Will that stand in the way of consideration by the DCA?
No, it will not. What DCA is looking for is that one, this area was already in the master plan, and it was. Number two, it's being specific. The SPLOST 2020 and the now developing plans for the area are being referenced specifically in the plan as well.
Okay.
But it will not. That will not harm the DCA award of additional points.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, let's go on to number 4. Another thing that DCA looks for, and that frankly has been frustrating to us working on this project, is that they give points for favorable financing or beneficial financing from local entities into the tax credit deal. And most successful low-income housing tax credit applications include this funding. But unfortunately, because the SPLOST funds have to come through the Athens Housing Authority, the current QAP is not written so that you can get those beneficial financing points in this year's time frame. We anticipate that this will be changed. At least we're going to be lobbying for that significantly in the future years QAPs. But in order for us to receive these points, beneficial financing must come into the directly into the deal. And that means that there has to be a way to take dollars and loan them into the deal at a low interest rate so that you get these extra points. And the mechanism that we've worked out is for them to come through the Athens Downtown Development Authority in the form of a low interest rate loan, which will be paid back. And local government is working on the arrangement to transfer those funds to the ADDA, and then the ADDA can place them directly in the deal. It's my understanding that local government cannot place them directly in the deal because of the gratuities clause of the Georgia Constitution, but that the Athens Downtown Development Authority is structured to do just exactly that. We originally thought that this would be a loan that the Athens Housing Authority would make that they would then be forwarded into the deal. It is now contemplated, based on more conversations with DCA, that this would come through the Affordable Housing Fund that local government controls, which would then go to the ADDA and be placed into the deal in the form of a loan and then paid back over time. So this would be an action, and in this case, it was thought that it would be brought to a final vote at work session rather than in June, rather than the June 2nd regular meeting, based on advice from staff. And the last point that I'd like to make on this is the dollars are actually not needed at this point, only a letter of commitment from the ADDA and their relationship with Athens-Clarke County Unified Government. The funds are not likely to be needed for another couple of years. They will come in on the back end of construction rather than early in the construction if we are successful in receiving tax credit award this year.
This is Alvita, and that was my question. I was going to hold it. Christine, when we were anticipating the tax credit, on the other side, if we don't get the tax credit, is there?
We're about to discuss that in just a second, Alvita.
Okay, all right. Well, then I will go on.
You're one step ahead.
Okay.
You're one step ahead. Yeah. So section 4 is the timeline and process going forward, and we provided 2 scenarios. So first, I'll just give a very brief touch point. We've discussed it before, but the status of master planning. I think many of you attended some of our earlier sessions in the year with JHP, the master planners, in February. We had a robust kind of building off of that, a series of days, workshops planned for March. Clearly, that was unable to safely occur and was canceled. We have been hanging tight, shoring up notes and whatnot and information collected from the previous meetings, but have retooled and are really ready to keep some amount of engagement going in a campaign online through surveys and any other ways we can, newsletters, to keep some input flowing to the master planning team. Again, this is in no way replacing face-to-face, but I see this as additive of the face-to-face that we hope to resume later this year. So that's where the status of master planning is, again, hoping for an adoption of a complete master plan by mayor and council later this year after we can return to public engagement in earnest.
And let me assure you, Alvita, that nothing will proceed in terms of concrete planning, architectural designs, building exteriors, anything like that until the master planning is done.
That's correct.
And we'll talk about now the project timeline with and without tax credit award.
Right. So very high level, if we are successful in tax credits being awarded, again, we would expect a later this year completion and adoption of the master plan or the transformation plan that would come out of that public engagement process once we can resume. We would hopefully be successful in award of tax credits and be notified later this year in November of 2020. That really kicks us off to 2021 of starting a phase 1 new construction design and putting the finances together for the first phase of redevelopment, expecting 4 to 5, who knows how many, again, waiting on that master plan process. And we would expect installation of the public infrastructure from the SPLOST dollars to be expended also, at least start expenditures and design work related, again, from that master plan in 2021. And so you can see here a late summer closing. So first units online in 2022, if we are successful in this first application for tax credits. First new units for anybody to move into right now would be fall of 2022 at the earliest.
So that brings your question up of what happens without the tax credit award, Alvita.
Right.
And basically what happens is it shoves pretty much everything at least a year beyond that. So now you're talking about residents, first phase of residents not realizing dramatically transformed dwellings until 2023. We, of course, would continue to operate and manage the property and make those improvements that are absolutely necessary, but we wouldn't want to make massive improvements for units that would be later than fairly soon torn down. The next opportunity for tax credit application, if we are not selected in this round, would be in May of 2021, and that's what happens. Everything gets moved back a year. That's why it's so important to take these actions in your coming meeting to increase and enhance our likelihood of being funded. We can try to begin to make progress on this multi-phase, multi-year transformation of North Downtown as soon as possible.
And so we have outlined, I think, the steps that we're requesting Mayor and Council review and take action on here in this last slide. I think that this is a fairly good summary of the dates and milestones and the topics. And then it leads us to that application. in June to the Department of Community Affairs for the phase 1. Are there any questions for Rick or myself?
See Andy's hand up.
I had a question. I don't know whether it would be for Rick or Blaine or Kelly or who, but I remember when we did the Columbia Brookside, one of the things that we did in order to improve our chances of getting the tax credits was we used the pilot money that AHA had been giving us for several years as part of that deal. Do we have any AHA pilot money left over that we could put into this deal, or is that not a possibility?
Yes, we do. I think Blaine may have more accurate figures, but yes, we do have that available. And since the dollars won't be called on until this time of 2 years.
Permanently. So anyhow, Rick, thanks for your great partnership. Christina, we really appreciate having you here. Thanks so much, and we're looking forward to the next steps.
All
Absolutely.
right.
Thank you for having us.
We'll sign off now. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, everyone, we're going to move on to the next component of our evening, which is discussion of a component of the Oconee Rivers Greenway, which will be an underpass that will go under Oak/Oconee Street. And I'm really excited about this, and only wish it could happen tomorrow rather than in 2023. But for the viewing public, this will mean that to get from Dudley Park to the component of the Greenway further south, you no longer will have to go over to the stoplight by Mama's Boy. You will just go right underneath the bridge and remain on the Greenway and not have to interact with any traffic or signalized intersections. So I'm going to turn it over to Mel Cochran-Davis, who's going to walk us through this.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I would say that I brought Derek Doster with me, but Derek Doster is here to assist with any questions we might have at the completion of this presentation. So thank you. This is a partnership between the SPLOST Office and Leisure Services for this project. As you can see, this is a T-SPLOST 2018 project. It is the Oconee Street Bridge Underpass, and we're going to be reviewing the preliminary plans tonight. Again, the purpose is to present this preliminary plan to Mayor and Commission tonight for this work session. We're going to go through the history, the GDOT project bridge replacement concept. We're going to briefly review the original project concept, then move into the preliminary plans, some more detailed project information, the budget, and then talk about the project timeline and our next steps. Once we've concluded that portion of the presentation, go ahead and take question and answer from everyone. So in the history, back in November of 2017, that seems like so long ago, but we actually had an approval of the T-SPLOST 2018 program referendum, and that included the Oconee Rivers Greenway project, which was project number 5. And in December, the Oconee Rivers Greenway Commission recommended the Oconee Street Connector, and that is the sub-project number 7 within project number 5, as a priority to move forward with this 2018 T-SPLOST implementation process. It was identified then as a really critical piece of the Greenway multi-use trail system. Fast forward a year, and in March of 2018, Mayor and Commission approved the project concept for sub-project number 7, the Oconee Street Bridge Underpass. Then in July of 2018, GDOT, or the Georgia Department of Transportation, approved the bridge replacement concept report, and that incorporated the Greenway Underpass as part of that bridge replacement project. So that was a really big win for us. Very exciting to see them incorporate the underpass as part of that bridge concept report. And then in March of 2019, we contracted with GDOT's design group to provide engineering services for the project. So the group that was designing the bridge, also designing the underpass project. Then we started taking public input about the preliminary plans once they were developed. And between April 3rd and May 8th, we've been collecting online comments. We did receive 7 comments about the project. Some of them were just looking at some questions about the height, and nothing was negative, just some questions and a little bit of, this is exciting. We want to see this critical connection happen. And we did have online public input. It did provide an opportunity for staff to talk with the public during the meeting. So we gave a presentation. We allowed people to have a question and answer session. And with those meetings, we had 31 people attend the first meeting and 27 people attend the second meeting. It's really nice, worked well for that online public input. So this, you might remember, is the approved subproject, or the approved concept for the subproject number 7. So this is that very high level showing the general concept of what we want to happen. If you look in the top part of the map, you can see Dudley Park, and the brown section of trail is the existing greenway along with Fisherman's Walk that goes along the river in Dudley Park. There's Okokonee Street. And then on the other side of Okokonee Street, you can see the salmon color line. That is the Easley Mill portion of the greenway. That's a newer section of the greenway. So the yellow trail is showing this underpass section, and that is the project that we're going to be discussing tonight. This is one of those engineering drawings from GDOT, and this is showing the bridge project. What's really key here, and just to orient you, if you look at the bottom right, that is the area where the Cars Hill apartments or condos are. There's Mama's Boy in the bottom right. You can see Dudley Park is kind of in the top right, and the North Oconee River. So this is the project proposal from GDOT and their approved project concept. So this is for the replacement of the vehicular bridge that goes over the river on Okokonee Street. And you can see that they have incorporated they've got it labeled as a future shared use path by others. You can see that connection between Fisherman's Walk and then going to the Easley Mill connector. So that is the project, that is the path going underneath the bridge. This is a rendered version of our preliminary plan. This is part of what we're moving forward, and this is what's up for discussion tonight. You look at the light beige area, that's new sections of path to be constructed as part of this project. The orange area is the actual underpass that goes underneath the vehicular bridge. And then the brown segment is the Trail Creek Bridge. That's a pedestrian bridge that crosses Trail Creek to provide, again, that critical connection going underneath Okokonee Street. And that is a pedestrian bridge there. Here we have various sections through the trail showing it's the 14-foot wide multi-use path, which is typical for this main spine section of the greenway. So this is something that we have a few different sections showing the side slopes, how everything works. It is concrete, and that is a 6-inch concrete depth. So we're looking at our very standard typical multi-use path section here. You can see this is a little closer up to show you how the bridge abutments would work, how this would go underneath. You can see the existing abutments, the trail going between those two, so kind of how it threads underneath that bridge. Here's another view that is not rendered of that same drawing that shows the various curves, the engineering layout on the ground. And then this one is really interesting to a lot of people. You can see the dip, that is where Trail Creek is, and you can see where the trail goes underneath the bridge. One of the questions we did have a lot was, what is the clearance under the bridge? There's a 9-foot clearance between the trail and the bridge. So just so you can see that, that's what's really interesting about this drawing here. So it does clearly outline where the trail goes underneath the bridge and what that clearance is. So again, this typical trail width is 14 feet wide. This underpass is only feasible by GDOT lengthening that Okokonee Street Bridge to provide a place for the trail. And that's really important. And that's, again, what I thought was so exciting at that beginning concept, because they are lengthening this bridge to incorporate this greenway underpass. We are discussing the installation of the Trail Creek Bridge foundations as part of that GDOT project, and that would be at our expense. But because the abutments and the foundations for those bridges are going to be so close together, it makes a lot of sense to install those at the same time. And then we're looking at the possibility of coordinating the trail and bridge construction with the GDOT contractor. It can't be rolled into the contract for the vehicular bridge, but we are looking to see if we could coordinate timing and possibly work with that same contractor while they're mobilized out there to construct this project. Moving on to the budget. You can see that overall for all tiers, we had about $9.6 million for all of the Greenway expansion projects. And once you move through the expenses, what's already encumbered, public art, different fees, we have about $1 million left for construction. And the current estimate from the engineers is $750,000. So we're in good shape for this project budget-wise. This outlines the project timeline and next steps. A nice visual representation you can see in the pale blue are the ACC Gov tasks, preliminary plan development, which we've already moved through. We've had our public input on the preliminary plans. And then you can see today, we are at today's meeting here. And then once we proceed beyond today's date, we're going to look at the final design development, the bid and award, and Trail Creek Bridge construction. So that's ideally what we'd like to happen, and that's what's under this proposal for the preliminary plans. You can see underneath in the orange color GDOT tasks, they're moving along pretty much in a similar timeline, but we are looking at a notice to proceed in the summer of 2021 with completion in the fall of 2023 for the GDOT construction. We anticipate that ours would fall a little bit beyond that construction date as far as the completion goes. With that, do we have any questions or comments?
Allison?
Hi, thanks. This is a long time coming, and we will patiently await this happening. I love the connectivity that District 4 section is finally getting to Dudley Park, as opposed to the squirreling around that Kelly described before. And I also am glad that they are redoing the GDOT's, redoing the lanes and that intersection right there at Nucci Space. Those all look like good improvements for that, not just the bridge, but also those lane reconfiguring. So on that timeline, Mel, was it that the bridge is not being done till, where's the bridge part? The GDOT part, and then it's our part, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So you can see, I pulled that slide back up.
Okay, right.
Under GDOT tasks, we're looking kind of, it looks like the last of 2021 is when the foundation construction would start for that project. I'm not sure who can answer this question. Somebody tell me what the timeline is for the major redo of Oconee Street and the Loop 10 that GDOT's doing. Are these going to be happening at it's overlapping with each other? Because that's going to be a really...
I can tell you when it's going to start. If somebody else has some information, please. I think they pushed back the let date until this fall. So they'll let the contract. I can follow up tomorrow by email on when the end construction would be. I agree with you, Allison, that on both ends, that would be, it cause a lot of snarls there.
Yeah, there's people are going to be very impatient with that, but we're anxiously awaiting both of these improvements. It's interesting that they're kind of going to overlap, but anyway, I'm good with the plan that you've presented and the details. I appreciate the different visual communications of it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go right ahead, Jerry.
Blaine, while you're at it, I believe the Atlanta Highway Loop 10 project is supposed to begin in 2021. Not that that necessarily is a factor here, but while you're talking to somebody, could you get an idea about when that project might start?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this one? Well, Mel, we really appreciate your work on this. Bring it to us. We know it's going to be an engineering marvel when this actually comes to pass, but I think the long-term benefit is going to be enormous.
I had a quick question. Sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, go right ahead, Russell.
Where are we with, since we're in this same geographic area, how are things going with Oconee Hill?
Williams, maybe you could talk a little bit about how that proceeds.
Yes, we just need to finalize the easement agreement with the cemetery, and we feel like that's very close. So we'll be coming to you for action. And then what we can do is provide a projected project timeline for that being built. But Commissioner Edwards, as you point out, that would be another critical piece along this section.
And how does the Oconee Hills section, how is that going to link up with this Oconee Street Bridge underpass section?
Mel, would you mind? Yeah.
I can speak to that. Well, the picture, the bottom left corner and the bottom, that's where that heads to the cemetery now, and it's completed now, and it hits the fence of the cemetery, and then the part where the bridge crosses North Oconee over by the UGA Performing Arts Center, that also has a dead end there. Oh, look at her! She did get to draw. She did get to draw on there.
That's right. That new University Bridge is where the Greenway crosses. Okay, that's right.
At
Okay,
that point, so if you get off the bridge at the UGA, that new bridge, and you take a left, you'll get a dead end turnaround. That's the other part of the cemetery section.
I see. Okay.
So you'll be able to go from UGA all the way over to here. It's just incredible.
Yeah, this is going to be great.
Awesome. Yep.
Thank you. District 4 getting a lot of perks these days.
We've been waiting a long time for that. People,
benefits the whole county and the region.
We just appreciate you not walling us off, Allison. Thank you so much.
No walls in D4. We're wide open. No walls here.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks so much, Mel. We really appreciate your work on this. We're going to move forward, everyone, to our third of 4 items that I think Suki Jansen, Solid Waste Director, and Joe Dunlop, the Waste Production Administrator, are going to speak to us about. For the entire time I've had the benefit of being affiliated with this organization, waste reduction has been an enormous goal. I think we made a lot of strides ahead of other communities. But I think, as Suki probably is going to mention, the landscape has changed and the financial world has changed around recycling. And so we're going to have to make some modifications to adjust to that. So, Suki, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you or Joe.
You've got me tonight, if that's okay. It's easier to, it's kind of hard to socially distance yourself around one computer. So you have me. Can you guys hear me okay and see the presentation? Excellent. Yes, I see Jerry nodding his head. So great. Yep. Excellent. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Yes, we've been here several times to tell you our woes. Back in 2015, when we first came to you, it wasn't dire because the recycling markets were still in good shape. Recycling markets tanked in 2018 and still haven't recovered. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the PowerPoint. The purpose tonight, again, is to determine the best and most equitable way for residents and businesses to pay for recycling and education programs and our facilities. And just to let you guys know that the Landfill Enterprise Fund will have used up all working capital, or what that'll be our change in net position. We will have no net position left to work with by the end of FY22 if we don't do something soon. Back in 2015, we went through an exercise to look at all of our costs for the next 10 years to see what we were going to be dealing with over the next 10 years. Some of our cost centers looked fine. Others, like the Landfill Enterprise Fund, we knew we would have some issues. In 2015, we didn't realize we would have as many issues as we do in 2020. And early 2016, we even projected some rates to see how we could deal with the Landfill Enterprise Fund issues. We presented some of those rates to the mayor and commission. Some of them weren't flattering. We went back and determined, in late 2017, kind of went back and looked at them a little differently, looked at how we could maybe reduce expenses, how we could seek out new revenues, and also figure out how we can truly get everybody in the community to pay for recycling education that we provide for the community. So we thought we had it settled in February 2018. We presented the recycling and education fee concept. We're excited about it. It was going to go on the public utility water bill to all residents and businesses, and even the University of Georgia, to cover our waste reduction activities. So, excuse me. So in March and August of 2018, we presented the cost of services and rates and showed you guys how we could embed this recycling and education fee in the rates that we have. We were rolling with this. We were ready to work it out. We even had several meetings with the University of Georgia in 2019 to roll this out. And then the attorney's office told us that the recycling and education fee could not be put on the public utilities water bill. And we'd have to figure out a different way to pay for recycling and waste reduction activities. And so we've been working on that this year to try to figure out how we could pay for all the waste reduction recycling activities. We informed you also in November of 2019 just how dire it was in the Landfill Enterprise Fund. And I'm back to remind you just how dire it is, but also to put forward some of the ideas that staff had and that are currently in the mayor's proposed budget for you guys to vote on in June. Currently, the Landfill Enterprise Fund, the landfill fees, that $42 tip fee covers the following activities, which are the recycling drop-off centers, Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, and the recovered material processing facility, which is the recycling facility. The Center for Hard to Recycle Materials are the CHARM, and a portion of the waste reduction and education staff. So this is what the landfill covers. Not everybody pays into, a lot of people use these facilities, but don't necessarily pay into the waste minimization fee or even use our landfill in some cases. Services provided, specific services inside some of those programs from the last slide. I just want to share with you, and then also I sent to Jean 2 front and back pages from staff of all the programs that they offer, all the events they offer, and all the partnership programs they have. But just a sampling of what we're hoping can still be paid for and be supported by our community, which is the Teacher Reuse Store, Adopt a Highway program, Loop 10 Daffodil Project, the Athens Area Tool Shed, waste reduction at events. Specifically, we were excited this spring to roll out composting at events, although every event this spring has been canceled, so we were unable to do that. Facility tours of our facilities, Green School program, the CHARM, there's so many services, and you guys were provided with the list of all of our services. And the point is that great services do cost. An alternative funding source for these integral programs is going to be required if we want to maintain these programs into the future. Currently, this is what our budget looks like. This was the proposed budget, the mayor recommended budget. You can see how it breaks down. The solid waste recycling division has $324,000. And I just wanted to tell you, of that $324,000, roughly $170,000 are for our drop-off sites. That's for our employees that maintain the drop-off sites, the trucks, and any repairs they need to those boxes, and additionally, litter cleanup at those sites. So that's what that cost center includes. And that right now is proposed to stay in the Landfill Enterprise Fund minus $19,000 is being pulled out, so we can start to wean the Landfill Enterprise Fund, the recycling division, off the Landfill Enterprise Fund. So that is in the mayor's proposed budget. Also moving Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful out of the Landfill Enterprise Fund into the general fund. Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful utilizes about $269,000 a year. And so that is also in the mayor recommended budget. The recycling facility, you can see the budget for the recycling facility is about $315,000. I will say at this juncture, this one could change into the future, which is important for my next slide. We just received 5 proposals. We sent out a request for information because we're looking for new ideas, innovative ideas on how we could save money in this particular cost center and maybe make money again off our recyclables. So we received 5 proposals from private businesses. We're going to use those proposals to craft an RFP that will go out early this summer. And so we hope that we might have into the future, in the next year, something different going on at our recycling facility so that we can maybe flip it back where we're making revenue instead of losing money and paying fees for processing recyclables. Since it has flipped as of 2018, we have not been able to climb out of that hole. We have paid fees every month in 2018 and 2019 and now 2020. We have not, we've paid more in processing fees than we've made off revenues. You can see the CHARM cost center is about $237,000. So all told, in the landfill enterprise fund, by the landfill tip fee, the recycling activities right now in the mayor's recommended budget takes up about $876,000. So the waste minimization fee is in there currently. We actually receive about $193,000 from the waste minimization fee, which is paid by residents who have Athens-Clarke County collection service and who have a private hauler. And so that goes to a supplement. It's really earmarked for furthering education for recycling and waste reduction programs. So that's what the educators get to use to educate our community and to do some of the events and programs that they put on. So you can see how much is still going to remain in the enterprise fund and how much is proposed to be put in the general fund this next fiscal year. And we had finance, Blaine had finance run an analysis so we could see what the landfill enterprise fund looked like, their unrestricted net position for the next several years. And if we don't change anything on that top line, you can see landfill status quo. If we don't change anything by FY22, we'll actually be in the hole for nearly $700,000. And so, and then it gets worse in subsequent years. And that's if we don't change a thing, meaning keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, stays in the landfill enterprise fund, et cetera. If we implement the changes that we're recommending, which are increasing fees, we have recommended in this next fiscal year, we're going to increase the tip fee by $1, and we're going to actually increase biosolids tip fees, et cetera, et cetera. So with some of those changes and with the slow removal of some of our programs from the landfill enterprise fund into the general fund, you can see the next line where it says landfill with changes. It puts us in a better position in FY22. In FY23, we will have to look at some things, and that's because that recycling facility, we still have to figure out a better way to actually handle our recycling facility in the future. Whoop. I lose you guys? Did you guys see me? Oh, there it is. You can see the projections until fiscal year 24 if we don't change anything or if we do some of the changes. And one of the change is moving our programs, the waste reduction programs from the landfill enterprise fund into the general fund, coupled with increasing the waste minimization fee. And that was my next slide. I jumped ahead. So we want to increase the waste minimization fee and over the next 3 fiscal years, move recycling drop-off centers, keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, potentially the recovered material processing facility, unless we can actually have a better outcome with our request for proposals that we're going to be sending out this summer, our Center for Hard to Recycle Materials and waste reduction and education staff. And just to recap, I know you've seen this before, but our current waste minimization fee, we do, it covers about $190,000 of the revenue requirement in the landfill enterprise fund currently, and it's paid by all Athens-Clarke County solid waste collections customers and all private hauler customers. Residential customers pay 60 cents per month, and business customers pay $1.60 per month. The only folks that don't pay this would be our self-haulers to the landfill. They do use our infrastructure, our recycling and composting infrastructure, but we have not had a mechanism in place to capture the waste minimization fee for those customers. What we are proposing is then we're proposing increasing the waste minimization fee. We feel like we can leverage and still use that fee. It's already in place, and we can increase what we're bringing in by tiering the waste minimization fee and also increasing in all categories. So by proposing these increases, we feel like we can cover an additional $390,000 by increasing the waste minimization fee to $1.20. In my math, I apologize. Chris Caldwell caught my math in the first PowerPoint that I sent you guys. I apologize. My elementary math wasn't on par. So you'll see a little bit of difference there on that first bullet. $14.40 per resident per year. That's $1.20 per month. That's a difference of $7.20 from what they're currently paying. And that is different in your copy versus my copy here. I mean, you can see also we're proposing to pull small businesses and large businesses apart. And we are wanting to increase small businesses. We want them to pay into the waste minimization fee $8.20 per month. And so in total, those businesses would be paying $98.40, and you can see the difference there. And then large businesses would pay $16.40 per month, or $196.80 per year, and you can see the difference there. Additionally, we had long conversations with UGA in 2019 on how we could equitably have them pay into the waste minimization fee. They have never paid into they're the only hauler in the county that doesn't contribute into the waste minimization fee, and certainly their customers, their students use our facilities. So we did come up with, we felt, an equitable solution, which was 70 cents per student fee. And that would be their waste minimization fee that they hadn't contributed to this point. And
Suki.
Yes.
Suki, is that 70 cents? What is that, per month, per year? What is that?
That would be per student. That was per year, annually. That's what currently, and that's just getting them a starting place. That would be annually. Thank you. Is that Commissioner Herod?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that just students who live on campus?
Haulers to the landfill. They currently do not pay the waste minimization fee at the moment. And I will say Commissioner Denson did throw out an idea, though. I think it was through an email when we thought we were doing this presentation earlier in the spring. And I think he had a punch card system that there could be a mechanism in place to actually have those self-haulers pay into the waste minimization fee. So we morphed his idea a little bit to solve the problem of our one-baggers currently, the sticker program that we just put in place at the landfill, so that our 1 to 6 baggers could still come to the landfill easily, not create extra traffic around the red building, so we wouldn't have to police that social distancing. So we feel like if this works with the stickering, although it's not exactly what Commissioner Denson proposed, we might be able to morph the stickering program right into where we can actually, with your approval, we could morph it into having those self-haulers pay for the waste reduction infrastructure that they use. I did not put that on here. I just wanted to mention.
Perfect.
And thank you, Commissioner Denson, for that idea. All right.
Suki, I have a question in that concept. I'm not a self-hauler. I've got a private hauler, but occasionally I do self-haul. Would I then pay and in your new scheme, would I then pay a waste minimization fee?
Well, I think we would have to look at that, and maybe the true self-haulers that haul all their waste out there would have the sticker program, but you would there may be if a person just comes out there to bring leaf and we have our regular leaf and limb customers that use our leaf and limb service, but also want to bring leaf and limb. That's not who we're trying to target with this. I think there would be a way, and I think we could even look at it right now. We're in the middle of the sticker program, even though this sticker program has nothing to do with the waste minimization fee. I think we could look at it and see who our 1 to 6 baggers of regular trash are, Commissioner Neesmith, and figure out how we wouldn't be double charging you, because we wouldn't want to double charge those people that are already paying for their haulers.
So it's really about trash and not, other stuff, metal and.
Correct. And we just want it to be equitable for those of us that have haulers. We're all paying into the system. and we're helping to pay for the waste reduction infrastructure, but the self-haulers don't.
Yeah.
But yet a lot of them pride themselves in using all the waste reduction infrastructure. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we have an opportunity here with the sticker program that we're using at the landfill right now to explore some of that, Commissioners Neesmith, and maybe work through some kinks like that we could have. So here's the current, oh, excuse me.
I had a quick question, Suki. Hey, it's Russell.
Hi.
Would it be possible to collect these haulers, these self-haulers address when they come to the landfill? Then you could cross-check that with your database and see who's not paying a waste minimization fee, and then they could pay according to a different schedule?
Potentially. I don't know how forthright the private haulers would be to let me look in there, that we don't get their databases. I will say for the first time ever, through what we had to institute because of COVID, we actually have everybody's addresses that are using the landfill and self-hauling, whether it's recycling, leaf and limb. We have more data than we've ever had at the landfill. So, Commissioner Edwards, we may have the ability, if the private haulers are willing to work with us, to cross-reference that. So I would say maybe. With the new data we have at the landfill now, and if we work with the private haulers, there may be opportunity to cross-reference we definitely know who our customers are, but we don't have a list, an individual list from the private haulers.
Okay, so we're just collecting a waste minimization fee from the private haulers, trusting that they're properly collecting it from all of their customers.
Correct. That's what we have done to date. Yes. And they do send in quarterly reports to us, Commissioner. I don't know that you weren't here when we instituted this, but they do send in quarterly reports with their check for the number of customers they have. And to date, we've only had really one hauler where we've had an issue. And we're supposed to be able to audit their scale tickets. So we know, and their databases. We haven't had to audit anybody's database, but we had some scale ticket issues with one of the private haulers that we actually asked for their scale tickets. And they were open about it, didn't like it, but they did assist us in getting the information we needed. But you're right, it is on the honor system.
And could you refresh my recollection about the thousands of phantom dumpers in the county?
I missed the thousands of, what was that, Commissioner Edwards?
The phantom dumpers, right? Aren't these the folks who have no hauling service?
Oh, we get self-haulers, the phantom, yes, the self-haulers. Well, when we first started researching this with the rate study, it looked like we had about 4,000 self-haulers. What we're finding out through this registration process, that we think we have more like 1,000 or 1,500.
Okay.
So it's not nearly as many as we thought when we didn't have the data we have now. And some of that could be because, I will be quite frank with you, we had some self-haulers coming from other counties that were willingly not tell us the truth on the scale. And some of them are really hard to figure out where they were coming from. It's not sometimes on their driver's license. Their license plate doesn't tell us anything because they have the "In God We Trust." So we can't depend on that necessarily. I will say this registration process that we're doing out there, I know you guys are getting some flack, and I apologize, but that was the safest way to keep my staff and our customers safe out there. I will tell you one thing that we are happy about. It's only allowing Oglethorpe County and Clarke County residents to come out there. We've seen a drop in some of these one-baggers that were coming specifically from some of the surrounding counties here. So we are finally really using our landfill for the two counties that are paying into this landfill.
Well, could we just continue the registration system? I've had nobody complain to me about it.
Well, I have.
Yeah, there have been some. So I think it's worth tweaking and looking at. I think now that we have the one baggers, that system going out, and once we get Saturdays back online, I think what you'll see, because we've had a lot of compliments, people like the flow. They're not out there stepping on each other because a lot of people would come at the same peak times. This spreads the people out over the day. I think once we get Saturdays back open and these one baggers, the sticker system really rolling, this is the first week of the sticker program. I'm hoping you guys will see a decrease in complaints. And I think we may have addressed everybody's issue, Commissioner Edwards, and with some additional tweaking, it could present a great way to continue to get data, also to eliminate other counties from using our landfill improperly. But also satisfy all of our customers' needs. I think it still needs some tweaks, as Commissioner Neesmith can attest to.
Yeah, I just want to put in place some rules as much as we can. I don't. We're not going to get enough compliance here on an honor system type thing. I think we need strong rules right now, because right now we're shouldering all the burden on the responsible ratepayers in this county and allowing folks on the honor system from who knows where to come in here and dump whatever they want. So I think we need the strongest rules possible governing this landfill. We're the smallest county in the state. You know, we need strong rules.
Yes. Melissa had a follow-up, as did Jerry.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious about citation fees. Are we bringing in any revenues from litter citations, and what kind of enforcement programs we have out there? Because people are certainly dumping stuff inappropriately.
Commissioner Link, that would be, we don't have a compliance arm within our department. That's code enforcement. So I would have to actually lean on Doug Hansford to ask him. You know, citation fees would go into their budget because they actually run that program for us. Now, we work hand in hand with them when we have illegal dump sites or littering issues. And the police also, you know, pull people over for littering, but we don't have a compliance arm within our department.
And let me dispel one thing too, Suki, thank you for that. The funds that are generated from any citations don't go back to a particular department. That might indicate that they're benefiting from writing such things. It goes to the general fund. I can certainly ask code enforcement for their history of illegal dumping. It's very difficult to trace unless we go through the trash and we're able to find some names there. And even then, that's difficult to prove.
Well, I know there had been some mention of, you know, sites that are regular dumping sites and putting wildlife cameras up on them to catch folks. Has that happened?
I know they put cameras up at one site, Commissioner Link. I don't know what the success was yet. So, but certainly, I know it has been talked about, especially in the litter abatement steering committee that's been formed. I think they've talked about using cameras in a variety of ways, but it hasn't been rolled out to your comment, you know, but they have tried it at one site.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in seeing that rolled out, because there are certainly regular dumping sites, and if we catch some of these folks, we could certainly clean up the community.
Jerry, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, Suki, the main complaint I've had is the inconvenience and sometimes the impossibility of a person to be able to visit the dump because it's closed on Saturday. So I'm just anxious to see us, if we can't get back open on Saturday again.
And we plan to, Commissioner Neesmith, we'll get back open on Saturday. I will say we want to start with the appointments on Saturday to keep things, from peak, you know, peak kind of traffic time.
I understand that, and I think my constituent probably would too.
Yeah, great. But you'll see. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Ovita. I kind of want to ditto Commissioner Link's idea about either getting some data or some information about cameras. My area, far north Athens, is very rural, and that's one of the problems, because it's so far out that people are dumping tires and they are making reports. But I would love to see if there's something you could let us know about possible cameras, especially in those areas that are remote.
I certainly can. This will be, the Litter Abatement Steering Committee is trying to get back online virtually or hopefully in person sometime this summer. And I think that would be a great, I think they would embrace that and want to go forward with some cameras. So Commissioner Thornton, if you will allow me, I will send that over to the Litter Abatement Steering Committee, which KACCB, Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, leads that program for us.
And Suki, while you're doing that, actually, if we can, since we're going to be moving into budget, what would that look like, cameras as a budget item? So, so not, you know, maybe we could take this seriously and not have to back up, since I know there's going to be a cost connected. So if there is any budgetary information, that would be helpful for the commission.
And so, Commissioner Thornton, I'll get with code enforcement and solid waste, and we'll compare notes and costs on that.
I appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you. But this is my slide that really emphasizes our problem, our revenue shortfall, and it will get, if we don't make these changes, which are increasing the waste minimization fee and pulling these waste reduction programs out of the landfill enterprise fund, essentially the landfill enterprise fund will have no working capital. And so again, this is what we're proposing for this year. It's in the budget, is to increase the waste minimization fee, also to move Keep Athens-Clarke Beautiful and 19,000 of the recycling division monies over to the general fund, and this will be the first of 3 years where we'll transfer roughly 300,000 each year from the from the landfill enterprise fund that covers the waste reduction programs over into the general fund, and that's coupled with the increase in the waste minimization fee. And again, the conclusion, recycling and education programs and facilities are a burden on the landfill enterprise fund, and we need to find an alternative funding source. And if one is not found, the fund will have no working capital, the landfill enterprise fund, by the end of the fiscal year 22. The mayor and commission, your waste reduction goals will not be met, and we'll even have to retract some because we would have to start cutting services and staff. The last several years, staff has done a great job of doing the same programs and events with really no increase in their education budgets, because most of the money had to go to funding processing fees at the Charm and at the recycling facility, because recycling has been hit so hard since 2018. They've had to kind of divert most of their education funds just to cover our processing fees at those two facilities. Those two facilities are great. We've had great programs. We still have a robust recycling program. They're still recycling in markets. It's just the in markets have not rebounded from 2018. I will say, with the virus, there is always, silver lining. The cardboard markets have almost doubled, and mixed paper also. People are staying at home, and toilet paper is made from our file stock that we get in next door. And so we're seeing increased revenues for our file stock, which is like the white paper that we print out, and cardboard, because so many people are ordering from home, and so many people, I guess, were hoarding toilet paper, that mixed paper markets have kind of skyrocketed. So those are two positives. I'm not sure they'll sustain themselves, but bottom line is we have to figure out funding for the landfill enterprise fund to either keep these programs, or I'm going to have to start cutting some of the services and staff with those programs in order for staff to continue to function.
And I guess, Commissioner, if I could just say, everything that Suki's presented is in the mayor's recommended budget as the first of a 3-year plan. The idea being that this is our first installment, and we're trying to write this over the next several years to spread it out. And if we stick with this for the next several years, not unlike some other things that we've done, we should be on the right path. And this was just sort of a preview of that piece of the budget, so you understood that better.
Yes, and that's what Blaine just went over my next steps. So perfect.
Sorry.
He summarized it for me. And that's basically what we want to do. And then that coupled with what I told you is I think we'll see some major changes in the next year at the recovered material processing facility, potentially with a different contractor or with the same contractor offering a different contract to us, because our contract at the current recycling facility expires in the fall of 21, but we're ready to renegotiate our contract. Actually, as soon as this RFP hits the streets and comes back in, we would like to see a better contract in place. So I guess there's any other questions. I think most of your questions were asked throughout the program, but if you have any additional questions, I'm here to answer them or attempt to answer them.
Suki, I had a question. So I'm very excited to hear about the new sticker program. And I did wonder though, have y'all done any calculations if we were to expand that out, like you said, to cover all self-haulers? Have we done any calculations of what that revenue increase could be if we're expanding out there? Because I know we have some estimates on how many self-haulers there is, and it seems like a pretty large number.
I haven't yet, but give me a couple of days. Staff has already been talking about wanting to run the numbers. But we have not yet on what that would look like if those 1,000 or 1,500 self-haulers pay into the waste minimization fee.
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, I mean, is there any, I know it's a bit of a different issue, but it all ties in together. Like, we were talking about the potential franchising, which, or potentially going to, just having ACC Solid Waste be the one service provider for solid waste across the county. Has there been any more discussion about that process?
Yes, and we're coming back in July to present a zoned hauling. And I will tell you another, I guess, silver lining or interesting piece, because we implemented this appointment program. We'll know where our self-haulers are coming from. And so where the majority of this, that we could see patterns, Commissioner Denson. We're working with GIS right now. We're giving them the raw data that we have collected behind the scenes for these appointments so that we can pinpoint where a lot of our self-haulers are coming from, so that we could literally start meeting with some of those folks and seeing how, seeing what zones we could set up and meeting with our private haulers to see what that would look like. So we've really, implementing this appointment system, we really didn't think about the data we were collecting on the back end. We were just trying to keep people separated and distanced and keep them safe. But what it's presented to us is data we've never had access to before, Commissioner Denson, which I think it'll be exciting to see graphically when the GIS department finishes our graphs for us, and in July when we come back with zoned hauling and what that could look like in the county.
All right, I look forward to that then, because just from how I've been looking at this issue and going towards a zone hauling process, or having again one hauling entity, as that being ACC, either of those I think can really help us tackle a lot of the issues that we're talking about. Tackle our waste reduction goals, cut down out of county folks bringing their trash here, cut down on what I'm calling self dumpers rather than self haulers. So I'm excited about that and hope that we can put something in place. And another great silver lining is they'll probably help us increase some revenues too, which can help out in the situation.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Suki? Suki, this has been helpful. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into this, and this is a pretty big component of what we care about as a community. So thanks for being nimble amidst the shifting sands of the market and consumer behavior. Suki, I understand that this work session serves not only as a great work activity, but this work session also is your birthday party.
It is my birthday party. Thanks for celebrating with me, you guys.
Happy birthday to Suki. Happy birthday to Suki. Happy birthday, dear Suki.
Kelly, can you mute him, please?
To you.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Happy birthday. We're just glad to know that there's a multi-generational musical gene in the Neesmith family. So, Suki, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
I guess not many people can say. Not many people can say they were serenaded by a commissioner for their birthday, so thank you.
Glad to be able to witness it. Hope the rest of your day is even better. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, last presentation of the evening. Another one that has sort of fiscal component or basis, and that's our Public Utilities Department modification in fee structure. You know, I think not only in the midst of this crisis, but even prior, public utilities were trying to figure out how they can modify the fee structure that would be kind of more fair and more appropriate. Fortunately, Public Utilities Director Frank Stevens, having worked on this, is ready to bring that to us now, which I think will be meaningful for commercial and residential customers alike. So, Frank, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Am I audible?
You are.
Thank you. The primary driver for bringing this forward is that it's time to review something that touches every home and business 12 times a year. That's 480,000 customer interactions per year. This relates to 3 Mayor and Commission strategic commitments and goals: shared prosperity, in particular, an analysis addressing opportunities relative to water rate structure filtered through the lens of equity and diversity. Informed and engaged citizens, directly engaging citizens on the front end of ACC Gov processes, and improving water supply resiliency, i.e. conservation. My aim tonight is to talk through a $5+ million a year reduction in fiscal year 21 enterprise fund revenue. We could progress straight to the recommendations, but the viewing public might be better served with some explication or opportunity for transparency. We'll start with some basics. Utilities are self-funded businesses that pay their costs through charges for fees and services, just as Suki was describing with solid waste enterprise. Fixed costs include functions like billing, which is the same per account regardless of how much water goes through a meter. Also, among fixed costs, personnel costs are fixed, at least in the short term, whereas electricity and chemical use at the treatment plants will vary by flow. And I will circle back to the topics of capital cost and fixed cost. The important criteria for setting rates is A, that they are fairly apportioned, and B, that the revenue from rates meets all the utilities' many obligations. And when it's a government-owned enterprise, in recognition that the customers are also owners and investors, those obligations deserve special emphasis. And like with an electrical utility, the price for a gallon or a kilowatt hour may be different if you're a factory versus a homeowner. Along with business needs and equity consideration, rates and rate structure affect demand and can also influence conservation. The first test of fairness is whether the rates are fair across customer categories, which makes you examine the differences in demand characteristics from one class of customer to the next. Now, this slide is not among those circulated earlier, but it illustrates the 3 main types of rate structures. Green is an inclining, brown is uniform, and blue is a declining rate structure. Let me explain the deflection points. You see the first bend in the green curve as it's going up. What that means is after you reach a certain consumption, call it 3,000 gallons, the price per gallon goes up to the right of that point as consumption increases. And on the flip side, in a declining structure, which is archaic in Georgia, the price would go down as you increase consumption. Inclining is better for conservation, particularly if an account class has summer peak demand. Looking at this through an equity lens, the installed capital cost for peak capacity is spread over fewer gallons. Hence, inclining rate structures make good business sense for peaky customer classes. If the industrial and commercial classes have a fairly level demand throughout the year, an inclining structure is unnecessary and a tad foreboding. Their incentive to conserve is in the price. And rate structures not only seek fairness across customer categories, but there's a second test: equity among accounts within a given class. Now, there will be a memo that accompanies your agenda report next week that discusses equity issues in depth. Let me summarize by saying that the recommendations before you attain a higher degree of equity both across customer classes and within customer classes. As discussed on those economic slides, there are substantial fixed and capital costs, which means that with lower volume sales, the price per gallon tends to go up. As I have been reminded several times by the finance director, water is an odd business because we encourage people to buy less. Water and sewer revenues from rates defray the operating and capital cost of the public health, fire safety, and environmental protection infrastructure. And as trustees of the public's investment in this infrastructure, there's a duty not to let that public value degenerate, or else we might create big liabilities on future generations. This chart was also not distributed beforehand, but I believe it helps quantify some of the earlier slides. For every budget dollar, 16 cents goes to debt service, 23 cents is depreciation, 6 cents are to pay the utility share of general fund operations like HR and procurement. 39 cents is all that goes for operations, and 17 cents funds capital. The slices in blue, debt, pay-as-we-go capital, and depreciation, are all related to the utility's high cost of owning and maintaining the public's assets. They add up to over half the budget dollar. As a reminder, you may have heard this before, the replacement value of your water and sewer assets is over $1.2 billion. If those assets lasted 60 years, capital replacement should average $20 million a year, even if nothing is upgraded, treatment improved, or water supply made more resilient. These photos are from an ongoing project to replace some of the century-old and undersized sewers in the Tanier Creek Basin, which was a top priority from the 2015 service delivery plan. People to get messages if flow through the meter is greater than the thresholds that the account holder chooses to set. So we need to drill down on the current rate structure before talking about adjustments. And if you would, put yourself in the role of a customer service rep talking to someone who moved here from Minnesota. The tiers, I've used this comparison before, are a lot like a staircase, and our staircase is pretty steep. So one dimension to an inclining rate structure is the volume of water allowed within each tier before the price per gallon goes up. For the sake of conversation, we'll call this dimension the rate steps, the step at which an individual's account usage enters into a higher tier under the current structure is a function of that particular account's historical usage. And one of the unique aspects of our rate structure is the narrowness of the steps for tier 2 and 3. For example, if the winter average equates to 3,000 gallons per month, that account holder advances into the top tier if usage exceeds a mere 3,750 gallons per month, which is barely above the median. This algebra, with the main variable being each and every individual account's moving average, takes a minute to understand. So the principal opportunity we have before us on rate structure is to look hard at the width of the steps. But before doing that, as directed by the Mayor and Commission on April 9th, 2019, we convened focus groups and published a survey on the web. I'd like to credit Lori Lofton, our Water Conservation Coordinator, for distilling the rate structure intricacies to a series of survey questions. That was very challenging. By way of response, widening the steps was welcomed, as was changing from winter average to annual average for single-family households. Now, the focus groups were able to probe and debate issues in much greater detail than responding to the survey, and setting non-residential and multifamily on uniform rates was supported by all. Putting all non-residential accounts on a uniform rate is consistent with most other rate structures in Georgia, and it reduces disincentive for expanded productivity. This modification may send a better message to prospective employers, which could translate into more jobs. And because of the wide variability among multifamily accounts and the fact that they generally have a master meter, all other utilities classify multifamily as commercial, not residential. And we all see irrigation at big apartment complexes and commercial centers. Please be aware that most of this is through separate irrigation meters, only for irrigation. And irrigation as a distinct class has some extraordinary peaking characteristics. The proposed non-potable rate is included here. It only recovers the incremental capital plus O&M cost of distributing recycled water. And we seek to set the non-potable rate now rather than later when it's available, because it lets those industries and institutions that can use recycled water make reasoned business decisions about changing their plumbing, increasing our prospects, by the way, for additional reuse customers. One last feature of the non-residential, the top 10 water accounts have use that ranges from 540 million gallons a year to 15 million gallons per year. Yet some commercial accounts use less than 12,000 gallons per year. I cite these figures to accentuate the fact that non-residential accounts are very dissimilar, although they're in the substantially the same class. Now, in addition to the notion that multifamily behave more like commercial than single family, multifamily demand in Athens-Clarke County has a valley during the summer. On a curve, if you drew a curve of demand from January through December, its water use profile resembles a swayback horse more than it does a camel. You could say that our multifamily class is an ideal customer class because it modulates peak demand from other classes. Now here, multifamily, to get into some detail, should include duplexes and triplexes because they don't fit within the single family class. Hence, single family will be carefully defined as all 3/4-inch metered accounts serving one dwelling.
Hey, Frank.
Sir.
I don't see the image of the swayback horse.
I'm sorry. The ones that I Googled were too anatomical.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
This is a very basic slide, and I apologize for that. Most of our commercial, industrial, institutional, multifamily accounts will not experience a big difference from changing the rate structure because Their current Tier 1 allocation is higher than their typical use. But there are numerous actual accounts among those that will see a difference. These are actual accounts. A stroll across a couple of the rows may help you decipher this busy table. The restaurant on the first row has a relatively small minimum size 3/4 inch meter and used an average 12,207 gallons per month in 2019, some of which entered the higher tiers, resulting in a total annual payment of $1,311. Going to a uniform rate reduces that annual payment by $419. Now, the last two columns also deserve some explanation. The column headed 2019 takes the total annual payment for that year, including the customer service fees, and divides by total gallons to show the equivalent rate per 1,000 gallons. In the case of the restaurant, $8.95 per 1,000. The recommended changes bring the figures in the last column much closer to the volumetric Tier 1 rate of $5.73 per 1,000. On the third row is one of many housing authority accounts. This is a 1-inch account. And in 2019, it paid the equivalent unit rate of $10.24 per 1,000, which drops to $6.44 per 1,000 with the adjustments. And in case you're interested, one of these is City Hall. Let me go back 1 minute. The differences up and down the last column, you still see some variation there. Those are a reflection of what portion of the total bill comes from the fixed cost of the customer service fee. For large users, the customer service fee becomes negligible. And the main point here is that establishing internal equity across these diverse accounts would be very challenging were it not for the flat or the valleyed shape of their seasonal demand curve, which suggests that the uniform rate is appropriate. Now to single-family residential. As a general rule, if we seek public engagement, we should take that feedback seriously. And the majority response was to widen the tiers and change from winter average to annual average to set the Tier 1 allocation. We see quite low demand during the Christmas break, and which is within the winter average months. Annual average is overall 8% greater than winter average. This change then raises the overall threshold for entering the higher tiers. The second recommendation here is to quadruple the width of the combined tiers 2 and 3. This means that instead of a household entering Tier 4 at 125% of their Tier 1 allocation, they will not enter Tier 4 until they use more than 200% of their Tier 1 allocation. This flag-like chart illustrates at what level of use single-family accounts the price increases. For example, for Gwinnett on the top row, the rate does not increase until usage tops 8,000 gallons. This is the same chart pointing to Athens-Clarke County currently per the 2008 rate structure for someone using 3,000 gallons a month. The width of the green and the red bars are very narrow. This shows what widening tiers 2 and 3 can accomplish. And most of these utilities don't use tiers the way we do. They have standard size blocks for all single family accounts, regardless of history, regardless of need, and regardless of the number of occupants. Now, our survey results were somewhat equivocal on tiers versus standard blocks. However, Equity analysis, which is detailed in the report that will accompany your upcoming agenda, suggests that tiers are better for equity than one-size-fits-all blocks. Tiers are more like a water budget, each according to its needs. Keeping tiers, at least for the single-family residential account class, does not make them easier to explain. But widening the tiers means you have to explain them less often. These adjustments are long awaited, and the results are beneficial to ratepayers. Perhaps this slide explains some of the interest to get these in front of you before the 2021 budget is finalized. Now, I should explain net. For some single-family accounts, which have an allocation, tier 1, tier 2 threshold, well above their average use, updating the average may actually push some usage into tier 2 that was previously all in tier 1. But that's not really fair to people that have an allocation that's more true to their history. However, that increase among those accounts with the high threshold from updating the history is diminished by shifting from winter average to annual average, but it is especially helped by the next chapter. I want to give credit to Glenn Coleman, Michelle Stroud, and the Water Business Office for this really big idea. Every account currently pays a customer service fee of $8.81 a month for water. Sewer customers also $8.81 per month. This fee covers the cost of customer billing, meter reading, and customer service generally. Using the new technology of automated metering infrastructure, AMI, billing efficiencies have really increased, primarily by decreasing the number of meter readers from 10 to 0 through attrition. The cost savings discussed when the AMI project began years ago predicted a 7-year payback, and that payback's been substantiated. For these reasons, it's recommended that the water and sewer customer service fee be reduced from $8.81 a month to $4.40 a month each. There are numerous benefits to this fee reduction. Right now, low volume consumers pay a disproportionate amount of the monthly bill in fixed customer service cost. Also, this reduction is the same for all accounts, regardless of the water used. Every water account will see a $53 reduction in their annual bill. Thank you, Michelle. The aggregate savings to water customers is $2,170,000 a year, and for sewer customers, an additional $1,250,000 per year. Now, wise elders tend to use less water than teenagers. And for a person using 50 gallons per day, this is a 25% decrease in their water bill. In addition to the rate structure adjustment and cutting the customer service fee, staff recommends no increase in fiscal year 21. And I need to put this in context. The financial element of the 2015 service delivery plan was accepted by the Mayor and Commission in 2016. The financial element set out annual rate increases each year through 2022. Staff suggests that now is not the time to enact the fiscal year 21 rate increase contemplated in 2016. And as an aside, this tends to make solid waste fees and other enterprise fees more affordable. The total from the previous slide with these recommendations slices 12% out of the budget. And in case you, like staff, are wondering how we can do this and still meet our obligations to ratepayers, owners, and investors, consider it a dividend. Since 2016, the utility has saved some money, which accumulated because the utility is an enterprise fund, and now is an appropriate time to pay the dividend. But please bear in mind that over the course of the next 18 months, the department will finish plans on designs on a large number of capital projects, which will occupy many of your agendas with large construction bid awards. And during the next 6 or more months, we will be working on the next iteration of the 2020 service delivery plan's financial element. Administrative changes. Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Blaine. And if I just might say this in a different way so that the folks that are watching can understand, the elected officials. So there has been some cash that has been saved by the enterprise, as Frank pointed out. And what we're doing with those funds is doing a lot of the replacement of the pipes and upgrades to the system that need to be done. And I can't underscore how important and how methodically this government, these elected officials have reinvested in our system over time. We don't exist in the infrastructure crisis because of that. And with these extra funds that we have, we're able to pay as we go. We can underwrite many of these projects with the money that we have and not borrow money, which adds interest and additional funds that ratepayers have to pay. So I think that, Frank, if I'm not mischaracterizing this, that we've saved, we've got a number of capital projects that will be paid for. And at this point, looking ahead to the next iteration of the service delivery plan, we think that we can move forward with less this revenue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Blaine, for expounding on that. It is vital. Part of the bond covenants that we have on the outstanding debt is that we not only have to maintain 3 months of operating reserves, but we also have to build reserves for what's called a rate stabilization fund for such unanticipated events like pandemic or loss of a major water user. Plus, there are many tens of millions of dollars in the queue for the next 18 months. One of the conundrums using a tiered structure is, where do you start with new accounts? Now, the minimum occupancy of 2 people at 50 gallons per day each protects single occupants from too much tiering for very modest usage. But it raises the question, what protects the 2-person household from someone establishing a new account and stating that they have 5 or 7 roommates? In reviewing 37,000 individual residential accounts, there are a host of new accounts that are set at an allocation of 7,500 gallons a month. Now, this was especially critical with very narrow tiers, less so going forward. The long-established practice is to let anyone submit an affidavit regarding household size. And speaking of honor systems, is really not a good way to verify. Curiously, we get very few affidavits for a decreased number of occupants. So the recommendation that the agenda report will make is to cap new affidavits for new account occupancy at 4 people, which equates to a fairly high 200 gallons per day or 6,000 gallons a month. But would make exceptions available for large families that can share usage from their previous address. And in our industry, it's very hard to compare rates or price per gallons because of some quite wild variation in customer service fees. So the industry has to compare bills for a certain amount of usage. Case in point, some Georgia utilities have a water customer service fee that's fixed regardless of usage of $19 a month just for water. That's good for revenue stability, but it runs away from conservation pricing. Our rates, by the way, are as follows. Tier 1 is $5.73 per thousand. Tier 2 is $7.16 per thousand. Tier 3 is $8.60. And Tier 4 is $14.32 per thousand, which is very conservation incentivizing. And Tier 4 rate also makes widening Tiers 2 and 3 all the more compelling. Your water and sewer enterprise has been prudently managed for many years, as Blaine pointed out, thanks to Glenn and many others. And the water users have respected this essential resource. So the question raised here is, will usage go up? And I want to return for a minute to supply and demand economics. The price elasticity of water is, by most studies, around -0.1. Some say -0.2. At 0.1, that means that if the price doubles, the demand will only decrease 10%. In other words, water is not very elastic. I believe one contributing factor, and I've studied this for decades, is that water is just inexpensive, and elasticity has less effect when it's less than a penny per gallon. Now, the declines in per capita usage you saw in that earlier chart may have a lot to do with Tier 4 pricing, but also I think it's been in response to this government's public education efforts and changes in fixtures and appliances, as well as this clip is also not in your package, but it's an example of the text and email messages I get whenever we run an extra load of laundry or water the tomatoes. The point of this slide is that the customer Water Smart portal make us all better informed consumers, therefore more careful in our usage and less likely to let a leak go undetected. Returning to the previous goal statement, these changes may not achieve perfection, but are submitted as an improvement over the rate structure we have now. And it's not without a bit of trepidation that these recommendations are before you at this time, because in the last few months, revenues have been down $700,000 to $1 million per month, which illustrates why the 2015 bond refi required the enterprise to reserve substantial funds in what's called the rate stabilization reserve, along with several months operating cost reserves. In other words, these recommendations have been deliberated at length and are not casual. Now, the benefits to the ratepayers in the previous slides and the resulting loss of revenue are annualized, but it can't all happen in July. If approved, some of the changes will happen quicker than others, and the implementation priorities are to do the items that have the biggest consequence and entail the least programming at the soonest. Changing the historical average will take longer. I really apologize for the level of detail in this presentation and the length, but the intention was to make this as transparent as possible, both for this convening and for the public.
Frank, can you put that last slide up for a few minutes longer so we can let it sink in here?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Frank, I want to thank you on many levels here, beginning with your ability to make these very complex subjects pretty clear And even though there's a swayback horse and a humpback camel involved, I sent you a picture of a good swayback horse, by the way. And also the other is that I have not been had some angst about the water rate fee structure that we approved those years ago. And you know, it really was a significant rate hike over years. I'm glad to take a breather here, and in fact, you know, cut the customer service fees in half. And this new tiering plan that you have, I think it's due. It's time to do that. It's never seemed fair to me, and this seems reasonable. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Jerry. Other questions for Frank?
I have one.
Go ahead, Andy.
So, Frank, there's a lot in here that I really like. I for a long time, I thought that the tier 2 and tier 3 were too narrow, and people would whip through those very quickly. So I really like the idea of widening tier 2 and tier 3 steps. I really like the idea of basically cutting the service fee, the fixed fee, because, as you point out, that disproportionately affects low volume users, and so I think reducing those fixed costs is more equitable. The thing that's giving me a little bit of heartburn, though, is moving from the winter average to the annual average. So as you will know, and others will know, the reason that we had used the winter average when we set this up a decade or so ago is that that's sort of considered the basic everyday usage amounts that people need to live their lives. And we were comparing that with the summer average. And so the difference between the summer average and the winter average basically represents watering of particularly lawns. And so my concern is that the bigger that gap between the winter average and the summer average is, as you know, we have to build infrastructure to accommodate, you know, the peak usages, and that gets expensive. And we've seen a reduction in our summer peaking when we went to using the tiered system and the winter averages. My concern is that if we go from a winter average to an annual average, that large water users, in other words, people who go out and water their grass, which is not particularly very, you know, environmentally friendly, that those who are less lawn waterers will end up subsidizing those who are putting a lot of water into their lawns if we go from the winter average to the annual average. So I guess I would like to pick your brain on that a little bit.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the question. We did plow through that during the analysis. One of the characteristics of being a university town is that the billings in December and January are extraordinarily depressed. They're quite low. And building that into the allocation quickly forces a more normal usage pattern into the higher tiers. That's the main reason for suggesting a shift to winter from winter to an annual average. Another factor is that compared with other utilities, the rise or the size of our camel's hump is really not too dramatic. And perhaps that's attributed to the rate structure. if you annual average, and we will recalculate annual average anytime at an individual account holder's request, annual average or winter average. But if you leave the sprinkling on during the summer months, that wouldn't adjust the winter average calculation. Doing one-time adjustments, there's a couple of issues there. One is that's a lot of administrative judgment calls that could in itself create some unlevel handling of accounts, which is worrisome when you're interested in fair treatment and fair handling. Now, if it's a leak, of course, according to code, for inside leaks, there is a procedure for adjusting the water bill and reducing what someone would pay for a significant indoor leak if they have a plumber repair it. That will continue. Leak adjustments will continue. But if it was annual average and there was high use during the summer, or let's say during a pandemic, kids came home to shelter, then after a couple of months of that, someone could call and say, I'd like you to recalculate my annual average. And then if it goes on for another 3 months, they could seek it again. That may be one advantage of annual average, but I'm not sure it rises to the level of the equity arguments that Commissioners Harrod and Neesmith mentioned.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how we're getting the word out to folks that they can do this recalculation.
With a change in the fee structure, I promise you there will be a PR campaign, a lot of public education going on.
I feel like it needs to be a constant campaign.
Yes, ma'am. It needs to be on the website and elsewhere.
Frank, I got to tell you, this automated metering system and notifications is fantastic. Every time I fill my hot tub, I get the email that night. You used a lot of water today. And you know, that's really cool. If I had a leak, I might not know it, and it's going to tell me about it. So that's really, really good.
Does that give us an indication of the night not to come to your house, Jerry?
Yeah, I don't want you around on those nights.
And I'd like to remind you that Glenn Coleman was the champion of the AMI project and has not rested to see it done and done right.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good thing.
Any other questions for Frank? Well, Frank, I know this has been a long time in the making. I really appreciate your efforts. Thanks for bringing this to us. I mean, I think, you know, the relief that it suggests would always have been appreciated by the public, but that's particularly true now. So thanks so much for this. Commissioners, thanks for the contributions tonight. Hope you're doing well, and look forward to seeing you at agenda setting next Tuesday. I'm Andrew Williams, and everyone else on staff, good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Good night.
To me, is preserving local history through the arts. There's a section of downtown